My name is Erin Hoagland. I am the Executive Director of the Center for Interfaith Cooperation here in Indianapolis. We engage all walks of life and backgrounds in building empathy and understanding across faith traditions and spiritual perspectives. We do this through dialogue and immersive learning experiences as well as service work. We're very passionate about fostering relationships, about learning more about each other and each other's perspectives and faith perspectives in particular. We believe it's possible to have values-based conversations across difference and still foster friendships and community, even if we don't all agree. And we also really believe that interfaith work is all about not just learning about others, but also going deeper with our own faith and our own values and our own spiritual perspectives. So welcome to CIC, our virtual Lunch and Learn. This is a new offering, so welcome to our first one. We're really excited. In these Lunch and Learns, we really just wanted to cover some fun topics from different perspectives. And while Halloween is a very secularized and mainstream holiday, it does have religious roots and various religious expressions. And we really wanted to talk about that today. We thought it would be fun here in this week right before Halloween is this Friday. So welcome to all of you. We will have questions at the end. So as you're listening to our panelists, Father Rick and Veronica speak, and you have any questions that pop up, please go up to the Q&A section of the webinar here and pop in your questions. And if for some reason you can't find that Q&A tab, just go to the chat and pop your questions in there. Now I would like to hand things over to Dr. Deb Saxon, our program director here at CIC, who will be leading us in this wonderful conversation. Deb.
Hey, everybody. It's so good to be with you all. I just wanted to echo Erin's sense of welcome. We're so happy to just have an opportunity to talk about some interesting, fun topics in a little bit more informal way with our CIC community. And it is so true that Halloween's spiritual significance often gets overlooked. And I think by talking about this holiday, it will lead us right into how people are thought about and remembered and commemorated when they have passed on in various faith traditions. So today we've got two special guests who are going to help us out. And I want to introduce each of them briefly. The first one is Father Rick Ginther. And he is actually a native of Indianapolis, so a native Hoosier. He's a priest for the Archdiocese of Indianapolis, and he's been a priest doing that since 1983. He has served in parishes not only here in Indianapolis, but in Tell City, in Richmond, and in Terre Haute. And he recently retired from parish ministry, but he's continuing as the director of the Office of Ecumenism and Interreligious Relations for the Archdiocese. And in that capacity, he's also a member of the Greater Indianapolis Interfaith Alliance Board, which is called GIMA. And he has earned a BA in history, an MA in biblical studies, and an MA in liturgical theology, and has just been involved in so many civic and church organizations over, he tells me, his 75 years of life. We're very appreciative because he has served so faithfully on our own CIC board of directors. And so we want to welcome you today, Father Rick.
Thanks, Deb, very much.
And then I also want to welcome very warmly Ms. Veronica Godinez. She is originally from Mexico. She has a degree and a background in social work, and she serves here at Christ Church Cathedral of the Episcopal Church, so the beautiful church right there down on Monument Circle, and she has been on the staff there for 20 years. And she has told us that she always felt a really deep respect for traditions that honor both life and memory, especially Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead. That it's just a time to lovingly remember those who have passed away. And so she said that this celebration really represents the connection between generations and the opportunity to keep her cultural roots and her heritage alive. So, Ms. Godinez, we really want to welcome you as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have several questions, but as Father Rick and Miss Veronica respond to us, we just want to echo the idea that we would love for those of you who are participating today to put in your own comments and questions. And so we'll take some time for sharing and for Q&A at the end. So you can put those into the Q&A. Reverend Aaron will be monitoring that for us. And you may want to ask a question, or you may want to comment a little bit about how those who have passed on are remembered in your own tradition, religious, spiritual, or cultural. So please take an opportunity to do that as our time continues. Okay, so first, let's talk about Halloween a little bit. For a lot of people, it's just plain fun. It's gotten to be big business. It's second only to Christmas in terms of commercial sales here in the United States. But of course, Halloween is connected to Christian observances of All Souls Day and All Saints Day, and it has deeply spiritual roots. So, Father Rick, I was wondering if you could just start us off and tell us a little bit more about what these holidays have meant for you growing up as a Catholic. And maybe just a memory or a family story about celebrating them.
Well, it's been a significant part of my life for the 75 years. Every year, we played on All Hallows Eve in our neighborhood. And I'll say more about that in a minute. But then the next morning, we were off to church for the Feast of All Saints. And then if we were able, again, the next day for the Feast of All Souls, we would also go to church. And on the Feast of All Saints, we gave thanks to God for all of the saints, the declared saints and the undeclared saints. We believe in the communion of saints, which means that all of those who have gone before us, whether they're declared or not declared, are part of the church. They don't stop being part of the church. And that's an important connection. We also, in the Feast of the All Souls, we always spend time praying for those souls that may not have yet quite attained full presence with God. All right. But they are a part of the church as well. So if you're a part of the church, you will always be a part of the church, and living or dead. Now, the fun part that we had when I was a boy was that we didn't have all of this commercialization, although it was starting. The masks that we wore were simply over our eyes. We kind of looked like the Lone Ranger. Okay. And the costumes were made ourselves, or mom or whomever helped us. One of my older sisters was a really good seamstress, but we didn't spend a whole lot of money on it because the idea was use what you got and then go out and have fun and come home with some candy. We also got a lot of fruit back then. It wasn't just candy. And nuts, like walnuts and pecans, those kind of things. So it was just a fun night. My biggest memory is the leaves, the smelling of the leaves. If it was raining, they were wet. If it wasn't, they were rustling. Things were dry. If it hadn't rained, it was just very dry. But we had fun. And we ran into our neighbor kids, and said hello. And it was just a night of fun. And then the next 2 days was a night of prayer, 2 days of prayer. So that's my memory.
Oh, thank you so much. It's really heartwarming to hear about that. And I know also, Veronica, that Dia de los Muertos is known as a time of beauty and joy. And I was wondering if you could just simply speak a little bit from your heart about this tradition and what it's come to mean for you.
Oh, thank you. Well, for me, Dia de Muertos has always been a celebration of life and love. A love for the continuous beyond time. It's whenever something dark or sad. This was about remembering with joy and honoring those who shape our lives. I remember when I grew up in Dia de Muertos, means going to the cemetery early in the morning with my family. We would clean the burial niches and what we call tumba or la gaveta, decorate them with flowers, and just spend time together. I can still picture my cousins running around, my aunts and uncles chatting, everyone's laughing and sharing memories. After we finished, there was a community mass right there in the cemetery. And afterwards, everyone would stay and turn into something like a picnic. People share food, stories, and just connection. It's what beautiful. You can feel the sense of the family, of togetherness between generations, between living and the departed. Those experiences really taught me, that remembrance another form on the love. It's not about to holding the breath. It's about to giving thanks for life and for those came before us. Over years, I become to see Dia de Muertos a way of healing, a bridge between the past to the present, between today heaven and earth. It's a time to say, you are gone from my side, but never from my heart.
Thank you so much. I just also feel so touched hearing what you're sharing as we begin our conversation. So I wanted to give each of you a chance just to go a little deeper in explaining more about these very important times that are coming up. And so, Father Rick, I wanted to turn to you first. If you could just tell us a little bit more about how Halloween and All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day got started and how they developed historically within the church, how they're connected, what purpose they serve, and really what their deeper significance is for Christians around the world as we celebrate them today.
One of the things that I think is most important to understand, this is a great example of another religion having a practice that was already there. Christianity develops, and then as Christianity intersects these other religions and the cultures, they find a way to use what is there, but adapt it to Christian thinking. So the Halloween itself started among the Celtic peoples over 2,000 years ago in Europe, especially Ireland, England, and northern France. We don't think about the Celts being in northern France, but they were. And it was a celebration of the end of the harvest and a start of the new year, because November 1st for them was the beginning of the new year. And their festival was called Samhain. It doesn't spell that way. It's Samhain, but the Celts have a funny way of looking at letters and saying, "Oh, that looks like Samhain." They also believed at that time, because the days were getting shorter, the nights were getting longer, that this was a period of time where they could commune with dead more easily, because the boundary between the living and dead was at its thinnest point. So the Druid priests, they would use this boundary to predict the future, to bring hope to the common folk for enduring the winter, which was for them more a time of the possibility of dying because of disease and cold. They built bonfires to ward off ill-intentioned spirits, and they sacrificed crops and animals to for a good new year. And the villagers attended, and they would be wearing animal heads and skins. So you can see kind of it was a connection to the ritual that the Druid priests were doing, and yet they participated. And if we reflect, some of that came down to us through, as we will see. So when the bonfires died down, the people would take some of the coals and take them back to their hearths and restart their hearth fire for the new year. So when the Romans conquered the Celts, they saw what they were doing, and they had their own festivals, like Feralia was the day that they honored the passing of the dead, and Pomona, where they honored the Roman goddess of fruit and trees. And that's where we kind of get the idea of bobbing for apples, which I have tried to do that and nearly drowned. Well, Christianity, as it grew, especially in England and Ireland, began to develop its own, within their own theology of death and dying and the saints. In the 7th century, Pope Boniface created a day for the martyrs on May 13th. What later happened, Pope Gregory III, in the middle of the 8th century, expanded this to include all the saints, not just the martyrs, and moved it to November 1st. Well, that intersected with Samhain, and the Christians would dress up in costumes of evil spirits or saints in order to depict the battle between good and evil. They called this All Hallows because hallow is a word for holy. So all those who are holy, thus saints. But by the 9th century, there was this beginning of the blending of the two, Samhain and All Saints, or at least All Hallows Eve, where you began, Christians had bonfires, parades, dressing up as saints and angels and devils. And by the year 1000, it had become pretty solid as a Christian 2 days. And then after the year 1000, the church began All Souls Day, and that was started in France by a fellow named Odilio, and it spread. So All Souls Day eventually became a day where we prayed for the dead, especially those who might not have yet attained what is theologically called the beatific vision, or seeing the face of God. And it is from here that we begin to hear about the concept, the theological concept of purgatory. It's a state of being after death, where if there is still the residual effects of sin and unpure, they are purged. They are, and purge really is a fiery kind of thing, such as silver and the dross and the gold, and etc. So it's not a very pleasant thought. Hell is even a less pleasant thought, but it is not bound by time, and it's not bound by space. So it's a state of being. So that is all part of the background for the two holy days, if you will. Okay? This is a constant reality within Christianity, where we intersect the people that we're bringing the gospel to there is the gospel and its truths, and then you have the other culture and possibly a different religion and its approach. And as those people become Christian, it sort of morphs into something altogether new. Now, you mentioned, Deb, the commercialization of Halloween, and that really finds its origin in the 18th, 19th century when the Irish came over from the potato famine, and they brought these sow-in practices that were now part of their observance of All Hallows Eve before All Saints and All Souls. And they introduced the ideas, people caught on to it, and by the 1950s, when I was born, Halloween was a big thing, a big secular thing. There was nothing religious about it whatsoever. And as you said, it became the, and one thing that I read, today you can expect at least $9 billion to be spent on Halloween, which boggles my mind considering the way I grew up with make your own costume. We didn't have all these things in our yards and all these lights. We just had this one day. Now it's become almost a whole month. So that's the Christian understanding of honoring those who have gone before us, those who have died, those who are with the Lord, and those that we pray for that they will be soon, because we're in time with the Lord.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the way you've just covered a great deal of historical ground there very, very quickly, really. And so we just want to consider all of that as we turn to considering Dia de los Muertos. And so, Veronica, I want to give you a few minutes just to kind of lay out the origins of Dia de los Muertos and how it brings together Indigenous and Catholic traditions and really helps people to relate not only to death, but to life. And I know you have some beautiful slides that you've prepared that you want to share with us as we think about how communities, including churches, really create space for this celebration.
Yes, one moment, please. Thank you for your patience.
There we go.
Okay.
It's coming up just fine.
Yeah. Well, the origins of the Dia de Muertos go back to long before the Christianity arrived to the Americas. Many indigenous people, like the Mexicas or Maya, and others already had rituals to honor their ancestors. They offer food, flowers, and prayers to remember those who had passed and to celebrate the cycle of the life and the dead as something natural and secret. When Spanish missionaries introduced the Catholic observance of all the saints or all the souls days, these two world views, indigenous and Christians, come together. What is merged in a beautiful blended tradition that expresses both cultural and spiritual truth. That life and death are deeply connected, and that love is eternal. Even I grew in Mexico. I actually start building my ofrenda or altar after I moved to the United States. In Mexico, the strength or the traditions can be really deepened in the region. In some areas, the indigenous practices are still very strong, while in others, the focus leans more towards to Catholic observance with masses and prayers. About to the symbols and we have in these altars and offerings, each element in the ofrenda o altar carries a special meaning. Example, the marigold or cempasúchil represent the sun. Its bright color and the essence guide to the souls to back home. The candles symbolize fire, the light of the faith and hope that illuminates that way. Sometimes we put also at a glass of water. It's placed to catch the thirsty of the soul after the long journey. Food and pan de muerto represent the earth. It's a reminder and nurtured and gift of the creation. And the papel picado represents the wind, the fragility of the life, and the unseen presence of the spirit. We also include salt, a symbol of purification and protection, and the copal, an ancient incense used to cleanse the space and carry up prayers upward. Together, these elements, earth, air, fire, and water, remind us of the balance between the physical and the spiritual worlds. The schools, often smiling, remind us that death is part of the life, something to honor, not to fear. And the altar itself becomes a secret meeting place between to heaven and earth, between memory and present. Amen. The role of the food. The food is another beautiful part of the celebration. Families prepare favorite dishes and their loved ones. Mole, tamales, pozole. The idea is that through the aroma and the act of cooking, memories come alive again. Food becomes a bridge between generations. It nourishes both body and spirit. Today, many communities and even churches celebrate the Dia de Muertos in the ways that respect both its cultural and spiritual roots. You might see ofrendas in the parish halls or candles lit next to the book The Remembrance. For me, that shows the heart of this tradition. It's about connection between cultures, between families, and between the living and those who continue to love. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for those beautiful images and for all these thoughts about, what I hear both of you saying is that these traditions, these special times of remembrance are really what help people stay connected with those who've gone before, but also in community with each other today. And, you've both kind of alluded to how these traditions help us face a topic that's very uncomfortable in our society, the topic of death, with something other than just fear. And I just wondered if maybe you'd like to say just a little bit more about that, either one of you.
But the whole funeral ritual in the Roman Catholic expression of Christianity is centered around the resurrection and the hope that began in our baptism. That has made funerals in that focus, much less terrifying in terms of death. We remember our hope for the persons being part of the communion of saints, and then we remember the hope that one day at the final resurrection of the dead, that all will be healed, made new for all eternity. That's a very uplifting thing. And that evil, the devil, or however you want to put it, is not going to have the last say. Just like the devil was definitely defeated by the death and resurrection of Jesus. So I find it very uplifting to remember those who have died and we believe are with the Lord, and very uplifting to be connected with those that we know they were flawed, they had sin, it's forgiven by God, but there's always that effect that our sin has, and we have to let go of that, how it affected us and how it affected others. So in a sense, there's an atonement there. But that makes it, for me, a gift to be able to think, oh, my sin is not going to win. Okay? And my death is not about sin, it's about the fact that our bodies are fragile. They break down and they eventually stop. So all of that I find very uplifting. When people say, can you celebrate a funeral? I've never said, oh, I don't want to do that. Okay? It's rather, think of the saints, think of those gone before us, and realize that that's where I need to help people focus. Veronica?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I really love this question because I think and the heart and the both days, Dia de Muertos and Christian observance for the All Saints on All Souls, is the same message. The love doesn't end with death. Mm-hmm. This tradition reminds us what remembering is not about holding on to the sadness, but it's about to transforming into the gratitude. We grieve, yes, but also celebrate. We celebrate the lives that touch us and the ways the spirits continue with that guide us. In many ways, these observances help to face death with peace. They give us permission to talk about it, to name our loss, but also to find comfort and the belief that we are connected spiritually, emotionally, even through the stories we share. When we gather as families or communities, whether we're lighting candles, building an ofrenda, or attending to the Mass, something powerful happens. We move from the isolation for connection. We realize we're not alone. It's our longing with our love. And I think we're also sense a legacy here. Remember those who came before us naturally make us reflect on how we want to live. What kind of love, kindness, or faith we want to pass on. It's a gentle reminder that our own lives are part of a much bigger story. In moments like this conversation today, example, where we come together across faiths and cultures, are also kind of remembers. They remind us that every tradition is in their own way, is searching for the same truth, that true memory, community, and life is renewed. So for me, these practices are really about the connection between people, between generations, and between living and the departed. They remind us that love is its forms and what truly unites us.
That is
Said
so,
Veronica.
yeah, so beautifully, beautifully said. I mean, I think what both of you are really pointing to is that, you don't go out or you don't stay in and celebrate Halloween or Dia de los Muertos just in a corner all by yourself, right? In the deep, dark part of your house, right? You do the celebration of these practices in community. And I think that really offers us certain emotional gifts, certain spiritual gifts. Is there anything else that you want to say about that?
I think our culture, this is going to sound kind of negative, but it is what it is. Our culture has decided that even um, funerals are a bother, that gathering around the body or the cremains or even just a photo of the person isn't necessary. And the sad part is that doesn't allow for any closure, which I think is just part of the human spirit, the need. Um, the other thing it doesn't allow for is remembrance as a community, and to thank God. However, we thank God for the life of the person. Um, that whole communal aspect of how we honor those who have died and stay connected with them is, without it, I think we really lose a great deal of connection, and it's just about us. We don't want to do something because it's either uncomfortable or expensive or both. That was pretty negative.
Yeah,
But it's
but
what as a pastor, I've dealt with it again and again.
and important to consider. Yeah. Veronica, you've already said a lot so beautifully, but is there anything else that you want to add there?
Well, this is an opportunity, most in this case, to embrace our traditions and not necessarily it's like, oh, this not, I don't need to do this or that. It's everybody is connected in the same way.
And don't you all think that these traditions, they help us to remember? And then you alluded to this as well. They help us think about how to live our own lives more fully. And I was just wondering if either of you would want to comment on, can you think of ways in which maybe these practices are really linked to this idea of legacy, about how we live our lives in light of those who came before us?
I was just at a funeral this morning of an 84-year-old man that I've known since I was ordained a priest. He was a member of the first parish I was a part of, Little Flower on the east side. And two of his grandchildren spoke about him. They were brief, to the point, was very well done. And then the now retired pastor really spoke powerfully about the effect that this man had on the community, the family, 56 years of marriage, 6 grandchildren, and so many ways that he taught them and they interacted, how important family is. The fact that the 2 jobs that he had over the years of his employment basically were service to other human beings. That is something that memory is just powerful. And just hearing it again, even though I knew a lot of that, it was uplifting. and says to me, now, go out and do that. Be that kind of person and do it from the basis of the shared faith you had with him.
Yeah. So very true. And how about you, Veronica? Anything else there?
Yes, that's something I can share also. Sometime somebody really close to me told me one time about what is the worst to death, to die. And I said, what is the worst thing, Lose your identity, lose who you are, lose all to what it all make you as a person. And sometimes what you mentioned right now, we thinking too much and commercialize more about to Halloween. Dia de Muertos right now, actually, I love when the idea to have these movies and everything to make this like more people knows about it, but it's the same time they make this more commercial. And that is, we need to remember about from where we come from. What is the beginning for all these traditions? What they make for us? And try to make this legacy like these are real,
Yeah, I think that's so true that just the very act of remembering is such a vital part of what it means to be human. And to know that you will be remembered is so important as well. We want to open things up in just a minute for other people in our audience today to ask some questions or make some comments. And I think what that will really bring us into is interfaith and intercultural dialogue, and how participating in interfaith dialogue can really deepen the way that we understand remembrance, the way that we understand renewal. Is there anything that you'd like to say about that before we open things up a little bit?
No, I want to hear what the other people out there have to say or what their questions might be.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So, Reverend Hoagland, I'm just going to turn things over to you. I think probably some questions or comments have been coming in.
Yeah, we do have a few questions here. So, I think this one is primarily for Father Rick. The question is, do you think the popularized and mainstream nature of Halloween is helpful or hurtful to the way we process death as a culture?
I don't see it as helpful or harmful. I see it as sort of neutral. It's a secular thing. I think it's the costumes either are scary or they are something that it's about a person we really admire for their qualities, or it's a fantasy, Snow White, whatever. I don't think it really has that much of a bad effect on our approach to death. I just think it's become so commercialized that I don't even see it so much from my point of view as something scary. I find it entertaining, especially to watch the kids and their parents. I lived in Irvington for 9 years, and the Irvington Halloween Festival is massive. Well, you don't want to be anywhere near Irvington on Halloween night. You can't move. People from all over the city come to that area, park their cars, get their kids out of the car, and descend upon the historic district. And it's kind of fun, but you got to watch out because you're going to bump into people, and it's become just so much fun. The thing I find offensive at times are the Halloween 1, 2, 3, 4, 9,000 movies. That's just blood and guts and gore, and I don't even think that's what Halloween's about anymore.
Thank you. We also have a comment here, and this next question is for Veronica. Anita is saying that thank you, Veronica, for sharing the history about Dia de los Muertos, and it's really been enlightening for them to hear all of this, bringing a higher level of awareness. So thank you for sharing. And to follow up with that, a question is, having lived in both Mexico and America, how do we process grief differently? And do you think Dia de los Muertos is a helpful aid in how a culture processes grief?
I think, yes, it's a little difficult, for example, for me in this case, when I don't have my family here. You know, all my family, my parents, and everybody lives in Mexico. My family here, example, is the family more close to me right now at the church. And the way that we handle when somebody pass away, or in this case, it's like a not necessarily sometimes is to be relatives and the blood, you know. Sometimes we are the human beings. We need to know about to everybody feels the same, the same pain, the same grief for when you lose somebody, example. In this case, the only difficult example for here when you want to make an altar, or it's just you make you don't use example for I need to put in an altar in the church or in the museum. I can use the real fruit example. It's difficult because you can it's not allowed to have food in there, and it's just like a it's not that what the real needs to be, but it's an example, and that makes us a comfort in this case. I'm not sure if I respond to that question,
Yeah,
but
that's
yeah.
great. So just well, and I have a follow-up question as well, that there's some limitations to how you make the ofrenda here, because it's not so much of the mainstream culture, but maybe it's becoming more of the mainstream culture. And a follow-up question that I've heard from others, it's like such a deep appreciation for Dia de los Muertos, and like at what point does it become cultural appropriation for those not from Central or South America to participate in the holiday, or is it welcomed from your perspective? For those who maybe don't have an outlet for their grief to adopt that practice, is that in any way offensive, or would you welcome that? And I know you can't speak for all people, but from your perspective, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I think everybody is welcomed, you know. Actually, for me, it wasn't a surprise because recently years, we started actually putting an ofrenda for the dogs or cats, for the pets. If you ask me for Mexico, this is crazy, you know, because for Mexico, it's not the same meaning what we have here in the, but the pets for me here, I learned about too is more like a family, and it's like my babies or my grandchilds, you know, this close to us. And right now we have this offering actually for them also in our church. We have this space for people, they grieve for his pets. And I think this is not just for, okay, oh, it's mine, I can share. No, this is a time to be connected, a time to share. And if somebody find that in this practice, that way to be connected is welcome.
Aaron, let me tag in here just a second. In many Roman Catholic churches, the whole month of November, from November 1st up to the celebration of Feast of Christ the King, which is the last Sunday of our liturgical year, and that's shared by a number of other Christian denominations. We hang the names of those who have died from the parish, or even additional names of family members that weren't of the parish, in banners or some form around the churches And it's a reminder of those lives that we've celebrated into death and into resurrection hope. But it's also having the communion of saints hanging right there. Just that reminder that they're still with us and we still honor them. And the other thing I would say is that at the Catholic Center here at 1400 North Meridian, which is the if you will, the corporate headquarters or the ministry headquarters of the Archdiocese, at the main entrance, once you get past security, there is an altar there, Dios de los Muertos, Dios de los Muertos altar, and it's people from the staff that have been here that died this past year, it's family members, etc. It's a gift to the Anglos. It's a gift to the people of other religions who work in Catholic charities, such as Muslims, Jews, and others who work with us to care for people. They get to experience it and see that maybe it just sparks something in them. I know it for me, it feels right to do this, but it gives it a much more colorful expression than my Germanic, Northern European way of doing things, whatever. Give it.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. It is. I feel like it has been such a gift to American culture to have, while many of us might identify as Christian in this country, to have this iteration or expression of the holiday from Dia de los Muertos and from Mexican culture has been such a gift. And yeah, I love that. I love what you've said there. We have another question here. Ernest asks, in what ways can we turn Halloween into an opportunity to serve others and show kindness? Or how can Halloween, or what can Halloween teach us about light and dark, like spiritually and symbolically? Thoughts about that?
Those are really good questions. I think the second one, working with our children, whether it's in our Catholic schools or whatever school, if they're allowed to talk about this, or parents talking about it, we have to acknowledge that there is darkness, but it's overcome by light every day. And I think that would be a really helpful conversation, that yes, we acknowledge the darkness and we go out in costumes in the darkness, but we come home back to the light, and the light will always be there. That's what I can offer.
That's lovely. And I don't know, Veronica, if you wanted to add to that, or if not, that's fine. No?
Yes.
Okay. And I do have a follow-up to that. I think there also are many Christian denominations that associate Halloween with darkness, or with the devil, or with Satan, and these kinds of things. And I think what you all are representing is something that's much more empowered and beautiful. What would be your response to that perspective, with, with being respectful of all perspectives, but all being Christians and having varying views about the holiday of Halloween, that attitude that it is an evil holiday. What are your thoughts about that?
I have a friend who is my personal trainer. He helps me to keep my body more or less aging well, which means he tortures me and I take it. He's a wonderful human being who, in his Christian expression, is not going to expose his children to anything that smacks of the devil, because in his Christian expression, the devil is very real, powerful, and to be not only avoided, but defeated by Christ. So when he speaks about it, I just say, yeah, okay, I get your point. Okay. I'm not going to argue with him. But I do understand that dark side can be overemphasized. And I think the light side can be too, if it denies that there is a dark side. So I'm fine with how he approaches it. I mean, he's got children and he wants to raise them as God-fearing children. Okay, that's fine. When they get older, they're going to have to deal with their kids.
Thank you. And I think we have time for one more question. I know there's a few others that have popped in, and I'm sorry we're just running low on time, and this is such a great conversation. But for one final question from Meredith, she says, cultures are meant to be shared. I think this is kind of going back to Veronica and Dia de los Muertos and the sharing of that cultural expression here in America, or in the United States. Cultures are meant to be shared. As it has been mentioned, most of the actions and experiences that we celebrate have been taken from other cultures. So in what ways can we help others to understand that in celebrating other cultures is like, how can we do that respectfully, and how can we show this as a form of respect? How can we celebrate these other cultural expressions as a form of respect? And so, Veronica, I think I defer to you on that. I'm sure both of you have something to say, but I wonder what you think about that in terms of us Anglos going out there and making ofrendas. How can we do so respectfully, and also how can that be an expression of respect?
Well, moments like this, conversation, this is a good way to learn about to that tradition. Sometimes we adapt the tradition. That is not is something I learned, is something normal. People do it. I don't want to say domesticate, but we try to make that things better for everyone, Sometimes people can say, well, we can take my altar just for 1 day or 2 days, and others take for a whole month. It's just, I don't think about should we respect the way we try to make this honor or this celebration for our loved ones. In whatever we try to make with a heart, is a good way.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Unfortunately, we are at the end of this lovely conversation. I want to thank our panelists, our discussion leaders here, Father Rick and Veronica. Thank you both so much. We'd all give you a round of applause, but just imagine the crowd's going wild. Deb, thank you so much for facilitating. I do want to let everyone know that we are doing another virtual Lunch and Learn. And it's coming up on November 19th. Is that right, Deb? November 19th at noon.
Right.
And we will be talking about gratitude and giving from 2 additional friends. So we'll be hearing from J.R. Sandadi, who is of the Hindu tradition. And we will also be hearing from Ernest Lifford, who is from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also more commonly known as Mormons, but we like to refer to them respectfully as the LDS Church. So we will have Ernest and JR with us speaking from their perspective on the topic of gratitude and giving. I warmly invite all of you to attend, share with others. These are free events, just fun opportunities to learn more about one another. I want to thank you all so much for coming. We have recorded this and we will be posting it on our social media. So if anyone wants to pop in and see what they missed, that is completely fine. Thank you all again for being here, and happy Halloween.
Thank you. God bless.
Everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.